Hello, my name is Dr. Marvin DeJear. I'm the Senior Vice President of Talent Development for the Greater Des Moines Partnership. And on behalf of the Greater Des Moines Partnership, I welcome you all to our latest episode in our Future Ready DSM Talent Webinar Series. Talent is at the top of everyone's priority list right now, and the Greater Des Moines Partnership is hosting a series of webinars focusing on workforce best practices and programs you can participate in to help you find the talent you're looking for. Just in case you missed our first episode, you can check it out on the Greater Des Moines Partnership YouTube channel. For our episode today, we'll be focusing on internships and programming for high school students and high school graduates. We are joined by experts and professionals representing businesses who will share insights on how you can be successful in your endeavors and create a meaningful opportunity for high school students and high school graduates to participate in at your businesses. So let's get to it. So panelists, I'm joined by such an esteemed group today. If you could start us off by introducing yourselves and just giving us some background on your role at your respective companies. And so I'll start off to my left. We have a special guest I should add as well, and I'll let her talk first. But and Lori, speaking of that special guest, if you could start us off today.
Sure. Thank you, Marvin, for inviting us to be part of your panel and this discussion. We're really excited about the topic for sure. My name is Lori Phelan. I'm the president and CEO of Iowa Jobs for America's Graduates, and we've been partners with many of you for a long time. So thanks again, Marvin.
Thank you. And Carly.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carly Harper, and I'm the vice president of IJAG.
Okay. And Lindsay.
My name is Lindsay Fett. I'm the Human Resources Director at Broadlawns Medical Center.
All right, and Curtis.
Good morning, Marvin. Curtis Webb. I work for Fett Corporation, and I'm the operations manager for our manufacturing and engineering services plant.
Thank you. Thank you all. So as we dive into the questions, each of your companies engages with high school students. What value does your company believe in and see from giving high school students these opportunities like this? And Lori, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Well, the population of young people that we work with, especially those that have multiple challenges in their lives or barriers or have different traumas, many times don't see themselves in the workforce at all. So as we think about the opportunities that our young people could have by having adults create pathways for them, it's outstanding. Mostly, I think about young people being able to help with our future economy for the state of Iowa. That's a biggie because we need to keep the lights on in this state. But from the student perspective and thinking about them, when their hopes and dreams are unrealized, we know that those individuals' lives are never fully fulfilled. And I think that that's an injustice to those individuals. So it's a win-win when we're able to connect our young people and the things that they think that they want and are able to do for the future with our businesses who have such a high workforce need. So.
Thank you, Lori. Carly, you want to add anything to that?
Lori did a great job of kind of summarizing it. The only piece that I would add and just emphasize, and probably will be a common theme you hear in a lot of my responses, is that the value is simply that connection of young folks who cannot see the opportunities that are out there or aren't sure how to navigate those, and transforming employers in their mindsets around recruiting efforts that can really attract today's young people. And so it's all about that relationship piece. And as we get into some of the questions, we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics on how that works and what's worked best for us. And I'm so glad to see Lindsay and Curtis on the call too, because as Lori said, we are and want to be partners with more organizations like Broadlawns and Pella.
All right, thank you, Carly. Lindsay.
I think Carly and Lori kind of hit the nail on the head as the safety net hospital in Des Moines. We're making sure that nobody gets left behind. And we really felt like the kiddos in our community at times were getting left behind. And so we really took it upon ourselves to make sure that we included them in part of our programming. And the buy-in and support of our senior leadership was critical in that.
Thank you, Nancy. And Curtis.
Yeah, so as a manufacturer, we see a lot of different values in engaging with the high schools and the students and having programs for them. One of it is our core values is giving back to our communities. So there's an aspect of that that's certainly embedded in it. But in addition to that, when we look at how do we successfully find the next people that we need to fill the spots in our company, the talent that's required to run the organization. When we can develop that talent in the communities that we're already in, and provide opportunities for those students to see that, oh, I can get a great job staying here, living here, building our community, we win as an organization while they win as an individual and, launch their career and onto their life. So we feel it's pretty important that we make that connection. The other connection and benefit that we've seen that I'll say for me was a bit of an unexpected one, but it's been really rewarding to see, is our team members that are working with these students and mentoring them and guiding them. There has been so much growth and learning and development and just understanding of, the next generation. And there is a strong work ethic there. There is a desire to learn, despite what they might have heard. There's been wonderful connections made there. It's just fun to see an 18-year-old and a 55-year-old viewing each other as peers and building a friendship and seeing the value in one another. That's been really rewarding.
That's great, Kurt. That's great. I'm going to switch it up a little bit here. So, Lindsay, I'm coming to you with this question first. So, how did you get started in working with the high school age demographic? You talked about a little bit earlier about, you felt like your kiddos were being left behind in your particular area. And so are there any schools in your region you work with specifically in this space?
Sure. So our goal, I think, kind of started with, we partnered with the Evelyn K. Davis Summer Youth Program, and we kind of dispersed them throughout the hospital in different areas and different opportunities. But then we thought, wow, how neat would it be to be able to bring a group of them together, let them form a group, all doing the same thing with the end goal in mind of getting some kind of college credit certification program. And how do we build upon that? So that's kind of how we got started. Partnering with IJAG to identify kids that are already identified as having barriers was really important to us, so that we're connecting with the right youth for our particular mission was important. And then focusing on the Des Moines high schools in our area. So, North, East, Lincoln, and some Roosevelt.
Okay. And Curtis, how did Pella get started working with the high school age demographic? And are there any schools specifically you work with?
Yeah, so it's kind of a multi-pronged approach to how we got involved. Some of it was locally here in Pella with the Career Academy as that was being planned and developed and stood up. So before that facility was put in place, we were engaged in helping guide some of that. But even beyond that, we have an outreach program where some of our tech trades people will go out to the different schools and the different programs that they have at the schools for, teaching skilled trades. And we meet with those classes, talk to the classes, share with them, answer questions. And we also let some of them come in and do tours and learn about what manufacturing is and the jobs that exist there. So that was kind of the start of it. And then as we kind of saw this need to try to connect, those students that may not be on a trajectory to enter into the workforce, into some of these jobs that we have, we had to figure out how to bridge that gap. And that's where the internships, and then we're also involved with some apprenticeships as well, but that's where the internships really started to come in, is how do we connect to that student that maybe isn't planning to go get that 2-year degree, but they've got some really good skills that their instructor has identified, and we can help round that out. Again, I mentioned we work with our local schools here in Pella, both Pella and Pella Christian. With that, I think there's about 6 or 7 of the surrounding schools that we have different programs that we work with to kind of help with that outreach, doing some internships, doing the visits and such.
Okay. And so coming back to IJAG with this question, I know it's a little bit different for you all, but so how did IJAG get started working with the high school age demographic? And of course, I know it's a little bit different, but what schools do you all work with in the region as a whole?
Yeah, that's really great. And Carly is probably going to be able to get better, closer with all the schools because we're expanding quickly based on need. But how we got started back in the day, Marvin, you probably recall that when Governor Vilsack was in office, so I mean, we're talking back when they noticed that there was a significant gap among young people who might be coming from a population of individuals that are often underrepresented, and the needs of the workforce. So clear back in 1999, there was an identified need in the state of Iowa. And from a personal perspective, and I think most of the IJAG staff, we realized that everybody doesn't speak the same language. I mean, our young people and their needs and hopes and dreams don't match up necessarily with the language of our business and industry, and yet they want the same thing. So we really believe that we got to be kind of that bridge and gap filler of helping to bring voice to the young people about where they're at now, what challenges they have, which often school is a challenge for them, not school meaning the academics, but just the structures. And then what are the needs of businesses, and helping our young people see businesses as individuals and our businesses see our young people as individuals, and together making this relationship that kind of Lindsay talked about, where suddenly they realize they've been best friends and never know it. And they've been living in the shadows of each other for all these years. And it's really making that connection. And that's why we got started with high school at the beginning, is to help them find a way, but also help bring our business community and our wider community together to see those young people who often aren't necessarily the ones raising their hands and say, I'll try it, So that's our long story, Marvin.
I'll jump in real quick. Marvin, you'll learn I don't answer just the questions you provided us. So I was thinking about the fact that we're talking about high school students, but in particular, more and more companies are wanting to get even younger. And so we actually have for a long time believed in systems of support. So within the Central Iowa region, we're at all 5 Des Moines high schools. We have 2 middle schools in McCombs and Goodrell. We're out in West Des Moines at Valley and at Southwoods. We're out in Waukee, Sadell, Perry. Next year we have Johnston and Urbandale. So it started off in this core of Des Moines, and now a lot of the neighboring communities and schools are seeing the value, wanting support and work-based learning at all ages for their kids. And honestly, they're looking to us because, as Lori said, we've been going since 1999. So we'll never claim to be perfect at this work, but we've learned a couple of things along the way. And so we think we're pretty good at that piece. And so we just keep driving a little bit younger and really carving out those career pathways with folks like Lindsay over at Broadlawns. So
thank you. And I appreciate that answering that as far as identifying the need to go back and work younger, bringing in middle age into the conversation, middle school age into the conversation. I definitely agree with you on that. So thank you for that. So moving right along, Lindsay, coming right back at you again. So what successes have you seen from the high school students who have participated in the programs? What sort of successes are you looking for from the students who participate in your programs?
Sure. Success looks like a lot of different things to our high school participants, and making sure that we find something that they're passionate about is kind of how we're defining that. We have high school graduates that have completed our program that are enrolled in med school. We have participants that have completed our program that are working as CNAs 2 years later. They enjoy what they do, they're passionate about it, and they're making a living for themselves and their family. So success looks different. So how we can support that and make sure that they enjoy what they do and are passionate about it, I think is the important part.
Thank you, Lindsay. And Curtis.
Yeah, Lindsay, I thought it really resonated with me that success does look different. And as I reflected on this question, it really made me think a little deeply about it, because we don't have a checklist of what equals success for this. But I think we've had a lot of different successes. In one case, we've got a high school student that had no plans or desires to go on to further education. They just wanted to get in the workforce and just work. And we were able to connect with them, and we saw an ability that, when rounded out with the 2-year degree, was going to give them the opportunity for career growth that they couldn't even imagine or see. We made that connection and help them see their way through and navigate to where they're working and going to school, and it's going very well. So that's success. I had another example where, you know, an individual started doing some work in a field that they thought interested them, and they learned through the process that this isn't my passion, this isn't what works well, and they were able to navigate to something else before they had, you know, invested a bunch in school or, you know, in a full-time job or different things. That to me was success as well, because we helped that individual find a path where they're going to be happy and, you know, be able to do what drives them and they're passionate about. So that was successful as well. You know, could have looked at that and say, well, that didn't work, you know, that failed, but no, it was really good because it helped them. So there's been a lot of different examples like that I could rattle off, but, you know, one of the other pieces that, you know, that I mark as a success in this, and I mentioned it a little bit in my other statement, is this connection with our workforce, with our current workforce, to understand and really see firsthand that we have a wonderful talent base coming up through our schools. They're not all just stuck on their video game or whatever preconceived notion they might have. We've got some really good skills and talent and minds coming through the programs and coming into the workforce. So it's given our, you know, our existing team members good confidence in what's next for the business. So that's been really rewarding to see, and I can mark that as a success as well.
Marvin, I'll also add that, you know, we've had to think as an employer that success looks different even if they're no longer employed with us, right? We've provided them an industry recognized credential. And so hopefully that's provided a career path for them. And maybe as an employer, it may not have been technically a win for us, but it's been a win for that individual.
Thank you for that, Lindsay, too. So Lori and Carly, talk a little bit more about what you have seen, the successes from the students that have participated in your programs, and what sort of successes are you looking for typically from the students that participate in your programs?
I'll jump in just real quick. I'm doing a standing ovation for Lindsay and Curtis, because that's what we really think about from our side of the world is employer transformation. When employers are thinking differently about this population of young people, and that they are skilled and they are smart and they might look different or behave different than we did or this person did when back in the day. But that's about relationship. That's about trust. That's about believing in the young people that are coming up in their community. So cheers to every industry that does that. We recently had a conference where Wellmark sponsored it for us, and young people were meeting these individuals in suits and jackets and having real conversations. The young people felt so respected and valued that they could see themselves in a healthcare field, you know, or they could see themselves in a manufacturing field, because now it's not about the company. It's about a relationship between two individuals who can help them find a pathway. So to me, that's a greater success than we could ever have hoped for. We always hope in all of our work that we do in IJAG is to take a young person that feels like they're broken or they don't have voice and choice, and help them see that they matter, they matter to their own community, themselves, the state. That's our ultimate goal. But the icing and the cherry on the top are when their community, and especially our businesses, see that young person as a future with them and believe in them. Whether they stay at that company, kind of to Lindsay's point, or not, they'll always think highly of those companies that help them get their start. So that's a win-win for everybody. I agree 100%.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add, Marvin, would and that I also was cheering on Curtis and Lindsay too, because what I heard is that as businesses, they're meeting our young people where they're at. They're helping them with not only that exploration piece, because they know that it's important, but also that they're willing to carve out different pathways than they traditionally have, because I hope that in the bigger picture, they can also see that applying to probably their adult applicants coming in who may have similar skill sets and interests. And so we've seen that with a number of our employer partners, where I can think of one example where we had an internship, and we still do, with John Deere, where it was an initially it was an engineering internship meant for those kids going into those 4-year college pathways. But as soon as DeJear had folks in our classrooms meeting with the students who were definitely on that higher ed pathway, they also knew that engineering wasn't their interest. And so they made adjustments into, we had an intern with their foundation communications. We had an intern in their finance department who actually compared executive salaries. Super interesting capstone project on that, where she had to report out to the CFO about how they compared to other folks. And so I really do appreciate the work that employers are thinking at a deeper level and really meeting the students where they're at. And to Lori's point, we read a ton of empirical data and research that just, and it sounds so dang basic, but really all people want to find their fit in their work. All people do, adults, young people. But if you're a young person who is just stepping into that and you don't have any confidence on where you're headed or what you're doing, I think that's where that why that relationship piece is so dang important, that if they can know that Curtis cares about them and will walk alongside of them, even if it means, to Lindsay's point, exiting out of that company, that matters.
Thank you, Carly. So, we've talked a lot about the successes and the wins, but as we're here today to try to talk about and give insights around the overall programming efforts that come along with working with these high school students and internship opportunities, I want to talk about the challenges. So similar to the successes, what challenges have you encountered in hosting these various programs? And are there any challenges you run into that are unique to the high school age demographic? Lindsay?
The first one for us was scheduling. Initially, when we rolled out our CNA internship, we tried to do evenings and weekends. A year into it, it was like, you can't take away a high school kid's evenings and weekends for 2 months straight, right? It had to do with some satisfaction. So then we looked at offering it as a summer program. And then we ran into, well, the challenges of the state fair is a big deal to a lot of high school kids. And so we had to adjust on making sure we start right when school gets out and finishing before the fair. So it's making those adjustments and scheduling as we go has been a bit kind of a challenge for us. And also the things that, as an adult I face, but some of these high school kids are facing it, whether it's taking care of children at home, siblings, that's been an interesting thing to work through. Transportation, partnering with different agencies that can help, either get them to where they're going, or the bus passes, I think, are important. But mostly the scheduling piece was something we really had to work through.
Thank you. Curtis?
Yeah, I'd echo that as well. The school activities and other things they're involved with, that's been a little bit of a challenge. And just the school schedule and our work schedule has created a little bit of a challenge, where we have breaks between first shift and second shift, a break time, and maybe that individual is available for 2 hours at the tail end of first shift and 2 hours at the beginning of second shift. And do you hand them off between mentors, and how does that all work? So that's been some things we've had to work through. We've gotten creative and navigated through it, but that's been a little bit of a challenge within that. Travel time, especially as we're working with schools that are 20, 30, 40 miles away possibly from us. That can be a challenge with the travel time involved, and whether or not you put a high schooler on the road for that much each day, that's something we wrestle with a little bit. And then as a manufacturer, we've had to really make sure we set clear understanding and expectations with the students and with the mentors of what tasks can they or can they not perform, based on their age and manufacturing guidelines and different things. So that's been something that we've had to be just aware of and navigate through. It hasn't been a showstopper by any means. So those are kind of the primary things. But yeah, Lindsay covered the biggest, is that whole scheduling aspect.
Well, and Curtis, how cool that you actually picked apart sort of those job responsibilities, because I think you're really a leader in that. But there's still a lot of employers that would say, no one under 18 can do this particular occupation. So I just give you a round of applause, even for kind of just picking it apart and saying, no, they really can do these things. So.
Yeah, I'd echo that, Carly, and agree that there are more and more businesses, obviously the ones on this panel, but several of them that are in the chat or in the listening in, that are those lead companies for the state. So give yourself some applause. I think some of the challenges come on, we are so used to the structures and systems that are in place that it's hard to get them to switch. So when a school district says, sorry, this young person is already failing math, so no principal financial group, they can't come and learn about finances at your company. What? You think to yourself, oh my goodness, what is our structure doing when we could eliminate those walls and get the young person to learn in a different environment. So I think a challenge is often getting people to think differently about where and how do young people learn best, and who might be an individual that could be a non-traditional instructor and guide and coach and mentor for them. So I think that's a huge one for us. I think that another challenge is communication. So our young people, we have to remember, come from a different world. I do, because I'm 60 years old, a different world of how they communicate, and aren't used to some mores around, well, call in that you're going to be late and it's going to be okay, but just let us know. Instead, they're afraid and they'll say, like, I just can't show up. Those kind of things we're constantly working on in our programming. And I know some of our partners, like with you guys, Marvin, continually helping them change kind of that mindset about appropriate communication.
I had, compared to that, mine seemed real basic and like form and function, but I had, I know Curtis talked about time on the road. Transportation continues to be an issue. Also, Lindsay mentioned nights and weekends being problematic for the young folks that we work with. They have to be earning a wage. They're working part-time and contributing to their family financially. And luckily, all of the internships that IJAG hosts are paid. And really, I think most employers can understand that, and we can work out something. And so, because it does then become, if it's unpaid, a competition between I have to go to my part-time job to support my family, or I have to have this, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to pick that part-time job because that's their immediate need. I also think, just in full transparency about who we are, I think that mistakes in the past from us have been not to give our students enough of that practice time, to put them into those experiences prior to them truly being ready. And as an organization, we continue to evolve and get better and better, mostly because we stay so close to those employer partners and are asking constantly what's working, what's not working, how do we need to shift what happens in the classroom, or while that as our specialists, the teachers in the classroom, are walking really tightly side by side with that young person. And then finally, I would say, again, because we're all friends here, I would say that our next journey is really going to be focused on deeper levels of that career pathway work for what happens after graduation. Is the goal retention with that company in that original entry point, or is it a career pathway? And what does that look like? Because again, if we can show that long-term vision, your retention will go up for sure. But if it's only this point of entry and that's it, that's carved out, you'll probably, best case scenario, have a year with that young person before they'll be out. Our star player went away, so I'm going to try to pick up any slack that she might have.
That's okay, no problem at all.
Yeah.
So as we kind of keep moving through the program, as we get towards the end, there will be an opportunity for folks to ask questions. So you can start thinking about those questions, and as you formulate them, you can drop those in the chat. So as we've just kind of touched on the kind of traditional challenges and things you all have learned as you started your programs, wouldn't want to miss the point that we have been in the midst of a pandemic the last couple of years. And so how has, if at all, the pandemic impacted your programs? And are there any changes that you made that you intend to keep going forward as a result of COVID and the pandemic? And Lindsay, we'll start with you. I'm pretty sure healthcare, you.
That's a loaded question for healthcare.
I know. I was like,
there was one summer where, unfortunately, I think it was that first summer 2020, where we weren't able to host some students. So that was a kind of a setback for us. 2021, we were able to bring students back for the summer. I think some changes we saw were kind of maybe trouble getting into the schools. And so having the kids come on site to do interviews, I think was nice. So getting to see them kind of out of their environment and in our environment was nice. So we might keep that, we'll see. And then when COVID came, thinking about whether we moved to online classes was a big thing for us, and the challenge on, are we really doing our students what we had intended to do by providing it online when healthcare is so hands-on. So we kind of essentially decided that wasn't the value that we were looking for in our particular internship. So that was kind of a hard decision. But now we're kind of back on the roll and full steam ahead.
Thank you, Lindsay. Curtis.
Yeah, so with our programs, we actually fortunately had been leveraging some online content for training with those individuals prior to 2020. We partner with Tooling U, so I'll give them a little plug here because they've been a really good partner with us. We partner with Tooling U for a lot of online content. They're kind of hour-long courses that they work through. So that really helped bridge when we did have to make, similar to Lindsay, we had to make some decisions in the early days of the pandemic of, can we have additional people in the facilities, training close to someone, working on, the social distancing aspects and all the stuff we worked through then. So we did have them move to just doing some online content rather than coming into work for a while. Then as soon as we, kind of navigated through that, we did get them back on site working. One of the other things that we've changed kind of, early 2020, and we're starting to get back to normal on it, I'd say, is bringing those classes on site and walking them through the facility, getting them that firsthand exposure to what we do here, as well as sending our team out to the classes. Those had all been paused, and we're looking forward to getting those back going and have started some of those again. So getting back on track with those has been good.
Thank you, Curtis. Carly.
Yeah, so similar to what Lindsay said, early on in the pandemic, obviously we're in the schools. And so when schools shut down, our first and foremost shift that we made was engagement. We're the relationship people. We know if we've lost that engagement, we have nothing. And so, and we really thought we could be a value add, honestly, to our schools, in that we were hearing they were maybe keeping in contact with 20 to 25% of their student population. And so during the pandemic, we started tracking that contact. What did it look like? How long did it last? What were we hearing during that? And so that was one of the shifts we made when everyone was remote. And of course, then last year we were operating, we have 43 different school districts that we're working with. And all of them did things just a little bit different depending on their demographics and just the overall environment of that community. And so we made many little tweaks along the way. I would also say that many of our employers were trying to keep everybody safe. And so they were not bringing in outside folks. So hard for employers to get into schools, hard for kids to get out of schools. But as things have progressed, we have been able to resume some of the things that we've done in the past. We also brought in some tools for engagement in a virtual setting. I will say, one of the things I should have sent y'all just as a laugh for the day is early on, I started doing interviews with employers. I was like, let's figure out how we can keep the conversations going. One, Marvin, I might need your help and guidance on how to interview folks, because I don't know that that's my forte, but all I could think about is we have to keep talking to each other, or we're going to have a lot of relationship repair to do. And there has been some, both with the students, getting them re-engaged in school just in general, and also then thinking about that employer relationship. One of the opportunities I would say, though, that I continue to think about, and this group could certainly help me in thinking about for IJAG, is many of our employers have shifted a lot of their work into that remote and virtual setting. And I know what's been kind of fun is walking alongside of them as they figure out how to manage those teams best. And one of the things that could influence in IJAG is how do we prepare our students for remote work opportunities when we're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-olds, right? And so I think that's an ongoing opportunity. The core of what we did, though, remained intact. When schools shut down, we did not stop. We just had to operate in a different mode. That's all.
Thank you, Carly. So you all have talked a lot about how you got started with your programming and different opportunities you all were able to figure out as far as just even work-related day-to-day responsibilities for the students. So, over your experiences of working with the students in these particular roles, is there any other sort of programming or networking opportunities that you decided to offer for the students? And if you did, could you talk a little bit more why you decided to add those aspects to your programs and the benefits, challenges you may have encountered? Lindsay.
So prior to their kind of formal education piece in our internship program, we spend some time doing some professional development, job shadowing, financial literacy. But I think it all goes back to relationships, giving them as many point of contacts, as many resources as we can is, an opportunity for that student. And job shadowing kind of goes back to career paths. I like to tell people I like Grey's Anatomy, but there's a lot more than doctors and nurses. And there's a lot of different opportunities that you don't see or necessarily hear about in a hospital. And so showing them that there's like an actual person that just takes x-rays all day long and makes a lot of money. So showing them a 2-year program that makes sense for maybe some individuals and showing career paths visually is an important part of our kind of in addition to the standard formal training.
Thank you, Nancy. Curtis.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we've got the online training content that we kind of require them to go through, but there is additional, many courses within that Tooling U library that we do open up and allow them to explore if they so choose. So that's one thing that we do open up that's extra for them once they've got their core content done. But the other thing that we connect them fully into any of our at-work activities. And some of those have been not as robust through the whole pandemic, but we're getting a little bit back to some of those activities, whether it be anniversary parties, somebody celebrating their 30th or 40th work anniversary. If that intern is working, they're right there celebrating with everybody else, getting to experience that, know what being part of a team like that feels like. We have meals and stuff. As we're on this podcast, I'm looking out my window across the shop floor, and one of our team members who's going to be celebrating 50 years with us coming up in a week or two, he bought cinnamon rolls for the entire shop floor just because he wanted to share. So I got to watch people walking through, getting the cinnamon roll and enjoying, some time chatting and eating, giant cinnamon rolls down there. So we keep them involved in all of those activities so they know they are part of this community, part of this work family. And that really, I think helps connect well with them. The other thing is we keep them involved in the recruiting activities and the outreach activities. They are the better face to stand in front of a class and talk about what this program is than I am. The students are going to connect with somebody that's more their age, has been there. Now sometimes we got to help them not be shy in front of that group and be willing to talk, but we're there side by side with them helping, but we try to involve them in those activities as much as we can as well.
Thank you, Curtis. And Carly, it's a little different, but I'm sure you all have thought and tweaked some things along the way too.
We sure have. And really our core day-to-day really is this work of IJAG. The IJAG model has student voice and choice front and center. So any projects we're running in the classroom, the students are really driving that effort. Our specialists are facilitators in that scenario. We have a student organization component we call the Career Association, and it reminds me of like an FFA or a business professionals, right? It's a student-led organization, and so that group determines their service learning activities, the initial employers that they might want to bring in, or career interests that they have, any sort of engagement with other clubs or organizations within the school, things like that. We also have about 3 different student-led events, and those really involve, one of which is coming up, and Marvin, after this call, I'll give you some information on that, but one of those is called the Career Development Conference, where students come and compete in different events like business plan, public speaking, employability, which is kind of like speed interviews. It's really fun, and really, honestly, so there are definitely some times where you'd like to say you have 5 minutes to give me your pitch, and then even in your real life interviews, right? And so our students get to showcase, and I love that this is coming up late in the school year for us, because that's really the time for them to show all of the things they've been working on alongside of our employers and that have been into the classrooms and their specialists. And then finally, our whole goal, Lori said it, is to really get our students out, get them out into seeing the things that the careers and industries that they're most interested in. And so while employers may come into the classroom initially and talk to a broader class, our job then becomes, who are those students that are interested in walking into the Broadlawns Tech Teach program? Who's interested in this John Deere sponsored certification, right? And welding and CNC, and really bringing the students who are interested in those opportunities. And again, being intentional on, what does that experience look like for the employer? What does it look like for that student? And what's the collective goal that we hope to get out of that? And so, again, that's our total world. And so we could talk for about 3 weeks about all the different things, but those are the highlights anyways.
Okay, thank you, Carly. And so you all have dropped some very good insights and some little nuggets along the way here during the conversation so far. I want to give you all a chance to even be more pointed and specific. And so what are some recommendations you would make to other employers looking to engage in similar strategies with high school students, and how can they come alongside and provide opportunities for the youth? Lindsay?
Have a point of contact. Don't try to take on all the schools by yourself, right? Reach out to somebody like Carly, reach out to whether it's another nonprofit that does some programming with youth, reach out to those people that have already kind of wrangled some of the young youth and found their talent and found what they want to be involved in, and present your opportunity. That's our big piece of advice is, sometimes when you try to do it by yourself, it feels like a lot. So to have another point of contact that the kids already have a relationship with and you're presenting an opportunity, I think really works well. And then another thing is, we have a program coordinator inside of our internships that the students can connect with. And so that's somebody outside of a manager or director role that maybe they're going to report to in the future, but they always kind of have a mentor and somebody that they can go to for advice along the way.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's really great information. Curtis.
Yeah, so a couple of things that kind of came to mind on this one, and we touched on it a little bit before, is be willing to break down those paradigms that exist. And we as an organization had to go through that. Are we really going to let somebody under 18 do jobs in manufacturing? And we had to wrestle with that and figure out how to do it. So you got to be willing to look at those long-held paradigms, break them down, to figure out how to make it work versus taking the first answer of why it won't work. So that's one of the aspects. We've talked about relationships a lot through this and the communication piece. I do think it's very important that you're thoughtful in how you select your primary mentors. So in our case, we try to have a primary mentor for each student. And then as they kind of go through different work experiences, they'll work with other mentors, but really be thoughtful about who that primary mentor is and, kind of how they, handle themselves, how they embrace the program to make sure that that's a good, solid anchor point for that student as they're going through. The other aspect is, make sure that there's appropriate diversity in the experiences and the fellow team members that the interns and the students are getting exposure to, so they get that full picture of what your workforce is, what your work is. Don't just go laser focused in one area and all they ever see is one corner of the facility for their time, and that's been touched on. And then as you're trying to guide an organization to jump into this, you got to call out those preconceived notions and just put them on the table and talk through them, because until you get those elephants in the room out and exposed, you're going to find people in your organizations that are going to lock up and like, we just can't do that right now. But you just got to call them out and work through them and navigate how to solve it, and not how to take a no, we can't. That'd be my thoughts on it.
And
I like that, Curtis. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Yeah, kind of just to add on that, one of the mistakes we initially made was we didn't include some of our potential mentors and managers in the decision to bring the youth in. And so once they were here, the manager's like, whoa, what's going on? As opposed to including them in the initial decision and letting them support it and getting the elephant in the room out. So that would be something we would do differently.
Thank you. Carly, any insights, recommendations? You out of the more tenured group on the call today. What do you feel would be some recommendations for employers?
Well, I think Lindsay and Curtis actually hit a lot of the main pieces. I'd just emphasize Lindsay's point about having a point of contact, a point of entry into the high school, whether it's an IJAG person or not. Having that person that can manage that relationship really matters. And in that same vein, I'd say develop a communication plan back and forth, because we, as an organization who's really wanting to provide our students and you as employers the best experience, we need to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly so that we can make corrections in real time. And I heard Curtis talk a lot about, once a student is inside of your doors, really establishing a support network that makes sense in your business. It looks different, to be honest, at the various employer partners that we have, because they're all different businesses and different structures, but really making sure. I would also say, if you don't have any current high school programming running, the place that I always start at with employers is sometimes they might have a college internship, or they might be working on a registered apprenticeship. And I just ask for consideration of what pieces of your college internship might apply to a high school student, or at a very minimum, what prep work could we do collectively together to make sure that our students are successful in entering into those experiences. For a registered apprenticeship, Lindsay knows this world really well, in that there are a number of schools and organizations that have quality pre-apprenticeship recognition by the Department of Labor. Again, just keep thinking about, sometimes the easiest place to start is by modifying something you already have in existence versus starting with a blank sheet of paper, right? And so if that's the place that's most comfortable for you and your company, I'd say start there. And finally, to drive home what Lindsay was talking about in terms of leaders within the within the company that can really drive that effort, find those folks who you think will get excited about working with high school students initially, because once you have sort of that buy-in from some of those leaders, your work becomes a lot less, because they're talking to each other. And now a whole bunch of people have seen the value in this high school, this younger population.
Thank you. So as we're coming here towards the end, I want to circle back to the audience again. If you have any questions, this is the time. Please feel free to drop any questions into the chat. So, we talked about some insights and recommendations, and there's always that one question, how much is this going to cost? And what are the kind of dollars we're sitting down and needing to invest in this type of programming? So, to kind of give some additional insights to employers and folks thinking about this, what were some of the costs that you all may have incurred when you launched your program, and any resources that you may have leveraged, or even individuals you leaned on for guidance in these spaces to kind of help you get started? And I will start with you, Lindsay.
I think that goes back to, you got to have support from the top, because initially, like Carly said, you got to pay them to get the results that you want and to reach the candidates that you want. And so some buy-in on, we're going to pay wages and we're going to do that is important. And then once you get developed and look at expanding into apprenticeships, there's a lot of funding opportunities through apprenticeships if you can get it formalized and get it going. Especially I think there's a new one out for youth due next month. And so I'll put that pitch out there. I think it includes wages, which is usually the most difficult thing. And so using your resources and having some support on it.
Thank you, Lindsay. Curtis.
Yeah, so on the cost front, we kind of took a crawl, walk. I don't know if we're running yet, but the program is running, but I don't know if we're at a running pace. But we kind of took that approach, which helped us kind of build it into our annual budgeting process to incrementally continue to add, and as we proved out and showed more value, we're able to access more funding internally through our processes to build that. And interestingly enough, for our sake, it all kind of started with a deep dive look at the aging workforce in one of our particular tech trades areas, which then kind of fun full circle comes back to how do we support getting youth developed into these programs. So that was kind of the start. When I think about the resources that we tapped into, I think Carly stole my notes and looked through some of the things that we did. So thanks for preempting that. But we took elements from some of the college internship programs we were doing that appropriately applied through our career academy at Pella here. We've got our apprenticeship programs that we're also involved in. We took from some of what we're doing there to help build that, and through that apprenticeship programs at the career academy that we're involved with in the business partner group, which in some regards I think is a pretty unique thing, where in our community we've got a lot of the main employers come together, even though we're competing for talent every single day. We come together for these programs, and put that competition aside and collaboratively work to build out these programs. And a lot of the elements of those programs that we've put together, we pulled into the internship program and continue to leverage and support the apprenticeship program.
Thank you, Curtis. And Carly, I know it's a little bit different from you on this question, but still you had to have cost every year too.
Well, and actually I was thinking about, yes, at the core, IJAG is a public-private partnership. And so we have public dollars that are matched by private sector funds and investors. But typically when that happens, and at the level that it happens, is based on the depth of engagement of that employer, meaning that if an employer, to Curtis's point, is seeing value in the work that IJAG and the partnership brings, they're typically wanting to support the programs that will continue year after year to have these students ready and able to work, right? The outside of programmatic support for IJAG, what I hear a lot from employers and kind of have talked through with them over the years is think about your recruiting budget that you have right now. What are those costs to, if you're trying to fill an area that historically has had high turnover, what are those costs in training and recruitment? And what are the costs that you currently have for recruiting a diverse pipeline? And I'm talking racially diverse, gender diverse, diversity of thought, all of the things, depending on your industry and what you're zeroing in on. But what are you spending on those initiatives right now to recruit from outside the state, outside the community, when, as Lori led into at the very beginning, you have a pipeline of workforce right here. And so that comparison oftentimes is a light bulb moment for that employer. And again, it comes back to what things are you doing that you find that you're getting the greatest return on? And again, sometimes that's a blunt conversation for us too. If an employer isn't seeing the return they thought, we either have to change what that is, or we have to change our work, right? So it's fun conversation, and oftentimes a little bit messy, but if everyone's feeling like they get a return, then typically you can prioritize your funding.
And the value in a 18, 19-year-old that enjoys what they do and puts it on TikTok and puts it on whatever the new thing is, I think has some value. Every year we interview and it's like, well, I heard from so-and-so who knew so-and-so who went through this program, or, my cousin did it. And so there's some value there too.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's good. That's a good little nugget there as far as how much within the networking of the youth, how important it is for them to have those positive experiences, because they do talk to each other and they will spread the message. If it's a fun place to be or not the place you ever want to apply for, they'll definitely put it out there on various social media streams. So thank you for that. So as we're coming to a close, I just want to give you all a chance as our panelists today just to provide any closing thoughts or last parting words of advice for folks watching today. And so we'll flip it up a little bit. We're going to swing it over to Carly first, and then we'll work our way back around to bring it all in.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any, words of wisdom left, but I would just say that if you're wondering about and wanting to have a continued conversation, that please look to IJAG as one of those resources, not the only, but one of those resources that can help you figure out for your business what might be the next best steps. And Marvin, I think you have all of our information. If you want to send that out, that's a-okay with me.
No problem. Thank you for offering, Carly.
And thank you once again for having us a part of this panel and just a part of the discussion. It's been a really great one.
Thank you. Curtis.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground. So I know if I was a participant, I'd have a page full of notes out of this, but I think kind of parting comments, parting advice would be, really try to connect and speak with others in industry who are doing these things. And that's advice either for employers or for students that are thinking about this. Just make those connections, talk to people that are there doing it. And then again, for both the employer and the students that are thinking about it, really think about the value proposition. For the students, that's maybe not always something that's front of mind for them. But if you can help guide them to think about that, what do they want to do? What are their aspirational goals? Do they want to own their own house? Do they want to, buy a car on their own? Where are they and where are they wanting to get, and getting them thinking about that, so then they can see that this might be a great way to achieve those goals. And once they start thinking about that, I've seen a lot of light bulbs go off or go on as they start thinking that way of, well, maybe that is better than just graduating and finding the next $10 an hour job or whatever it might be. I can actually gain some skills and I can move into a career that has growth and potential in it. So I think it's really important to get people thinking about that value proposition. And then it's been covered a number of times for the businesses, that value in developing the talent that's close to you rather than, trying to recruit from far away and get people to move in, and the retention risk and all those things. And, then as I mentioned, our company has a core value of investing in our communities. So that's important to us as well.
Thank you, Curtis. And Lindsay.
Connect with an open mind. Open mind is a really big part of it. You're going to, like Carly touch a lot of people that maybe don't look like you, don't feel like you, don't grow up like you grew up. And to have an open mind and remember that they have families too. We have a big graduation at the end of our internship, and their family comes in to support them in this endeavor, and to see it come to life, and the entire family dynamic has changed. Because this person now has, 6 college credits and a certificate and is on their way to a career. To see that impact on a family, and then as it grows to a community, but you got to keep an open mind.
Thank you, Lindsay. So again, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Lindsay, Carly, Curtis. Carly, let Lori know we appreciate her for being our special guest addition today. And again, if you all have any questions, feel free. I'll put the information out for our panelists today. Just know here too at the Greater Des Moines Partnership, we're here and committed to helping provide opportunities for youth for our entire region that we serve, for all the 10 counties that we serve as well. So thank you again for joining us for the latest episode of our Future Ready DSM Talent webinar, and we look forward to seeing you next month for our next episode. Thank you all for joining, and until next time, thank you.